Picture this. You're sitting in a room full of people. Someone just said something that hit you like a punch in the gut. Every instinct in you wants to fire back. Defend yourself, set the record straight. Your heart rate spikes, your palms itch. The words are sitting right there on the tip of your tongue. But you don't say them. You sit still, you keep your face calm, and you watch. Suddenly, the room changes. The other person starts filling the silence. They stumble over their words. They explain more than they should. They give away things you didn't even ask for. And you're holding all the cards because you said nothing. Silence. It's not passive. It's not weakness. Today, it's a weapon. Most people don't know when to use it, and that's why they give away their power every single day, at work, at home, online, even with strangers. They talk themselves into corners, leak information, escalate fights, and lose negotiations, all because they couldn't keep quiet when it mattered most. If you master the art of staying silent in the right moments, you will control more than just conversations. You will control outcomes. And once you understand these 9 situations, you'll never waste your words again. And I promise you, once you see how silence works, you'll wish you had learned this years ago. Shall we step into the first one? Because after today, you will never hear the sound of silence the same way again. When most people hear the word silence, they picture something passive, quiet, maybe even timid. We're taught from the time we're kids that speaking up is how you show confidence, how you stand your ground. Use your voice, they tell you. Don't let anyone silence you. And sure, there's a time and place for that. But here's the truth. Silence is not the absence of power. It's the concentration of it. Silence is the move that makes other people wonder what you're thinking. It creates tension. It forces the other side to fill the gap. When you open your mouth too quickly, you give away the one thing you can never get back. Control over the flow of the moment. When you stay quiet, you keep that control. Think about a high-stakes negotiation. The moment you say your offer, the other person might look at you and just pause. They don't rush to respond. They let the words hang there in the air. That pause is pressure. It makes you second-guess yourself. It makes you feel the need to keep talking, to justify your position, to adjust your offer. And the moment you start doing that, you've lost ground. The person who controls the silence controls the conversation. I've seen this play out in situations far more intense than a business deal. In an interrogation room, silence can be more effective than any question. Ask a suspect something direct and then just wait. Most people can't handle that dead air. They feel uncomfortable. They start talking just to break the tension. And in doing so, they reveal more than they meant to, sometimes more than they even realized they knew. The same principle works in everyday life. Someone throws a jab at you in a meeting. They expect you to react, to defend yourself, to push back, to show they got under your skin. But if you meet that with absolute silence, you don't just avoid giving them the reaction they wanted, you flip the dynamic. Now they look for confirmation. Now they start explaining themselves, softening their words, even backtracking. Silence puts the weight of the moment on them, not you. This is why silence is not weakness. It's strategy. Weakness is reacting without thinking. Weakness is letting your emotions run the show. Silence, on the other hand, is the discipline to hold back, even when every muscle in your body is screaming to speak. It's not that you don't have something to say, it's that you know saying it right now would give away your position. Here's the thing. Silence doesn't mean inaction. It's not about sitting in the corner and doing nothing. It's an active choice. You are choosing not to engage in that moment because you're looking at the bigger picture. You're calculating, you're gathering intel, you're making the other side reveal themselves before you decide your next move. That is the definition of power. Having the patience and control to wait until the moment benefits you. People underestimate the psychological pressure of silence. Humans are wired to fill empty space. In conversation, that urge is almost irresistible. If you can learn to tolerate the discomfort of silence, you can weaponize it. You can let someone talk themselves into a mistake. You can let them underestimate you. Because you haven't shown your hand, you can force them to reveal their priorities, their fears, and their weak spots, while you sit there saying nothing, watching it all unfold. But here's the key. You have to own your silence. If you sit there looking nervous, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, your silence will look like submission. But if you sit still, hold your posture, meet their eyes with calm confidence, that same silence becomes dominance. You're not silent because you're unsure. You're silent because you're in control. Look at the most respected leaders, the most dangerous negotiators, the most skilled communicators. None of them are the ones talking the most. They don't rush to fill the air. When they speak, it's deliberate, it's measured, and the reason their words carry weight is because they're not constantly throwing them out. Scarcity creates value, and that applies to speech just as much as it does to gold. Think about the last time someone you admired spoke in a meeting. Maybe they didn't say much for most of it, but when they did speak, everyone leaned in. Why? Because their silence made everyone curious. Their words were rare enough to be worth listening to. That's what silence can do for you. It makes people take notice when you do decide to speak. This isn't just about business or leadership. It's about everyday life. In an argument with a partner or friend, silence can be the difference between escalation and resolution. If you speak in anger, you can't take those words back. They'll hang there long after the moment has passed. But if you stay quiet, you give yourself time to think. You give the other person space to cool down. You take the fire out of the conflict instead of throwing gasoline on it. Now, I'm not saying you should use silence as some manipulative tool to play games with people. The goal isn't to be cold or distant. The goal is to be intentional, to understand that sometimes the strongest statement you can make is no statement at all. There will be moments in your life where silence will feel like the hardest choice you can make. You'll want to prove your point. You'll want to correct the record. You'll want to fire back. But if you can push past that impulse, if you can see the bigger picture, you'll realize that every word you don't say is just as powerful and sometimes more powerful than the ones you do. Silence is the power move. Nobody expects. It's the pause that makes people lean forward. It's the stillness that makes others reveal themselves. It's the discipline to hold your position when everyone else is scrambling to fill the air. And the moment you understand that, you stop being just another voice in the noise. You become the one people wait for, the one they pay attention to, the one who doesn't have to fight for respect because they command it, even in complete silence. And once you master that, every conversation, every conflict, every high-stakes situation you walk into, you walk in holding the advantage, not because you talk the loudest, but because you didn't have to. Every single time you open your mouth, you're giving away something. It might be a detail about your life, an opinion, a belief, or a reaction that tells people exactly how to push your buttons. Words are data points, and the more of them you give, the easier it is for others to map out who you are, what you want, and how to influence you. Silence is your firewall. It's the invisible barrier that keeps your private thoughts from becoming someone else's weapon. Think about it like this. Once something leaves your lips, it's out in the world forever. You can't pull it back. You can't unsay it. People can twist it, repeat it, exaggerate it, or store it for the perfect time to use against you. And here's the dangerous part. It doesn't even have to be malicious. Sometimes someone takes your words out of context simply because they didn't fully understand you. Other times, your own words can make you look foolish because you spoke before you had all the facts. Either way, the result is the same. Damage to your reputation. In high-stakes environments, whether that's corporate boardrooms, legal proceedings, politics, or even family drama, your reputation is currency. Once it's damaged, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. And a lot of people sabotage themselves simply because they don't know how to keep quiet when it counts. They overshare, they try to explain every detail, they try to prove their point in real time, and in doing so, they leak information they didn't need to share. I've watched people ruin negotiations because they couldn't stop talking. They reveal how desperate they are for the deal. They give away their bottom line. They tell stories that make the other side realize exactly how much leverage they have. And once the other person sees that vulnerability, it's game over. The same principle applies in relationships. If you vent every single frustration to someone who hasn't earned your trust, you hand them the blueprint to hurt you later. Silence doesn't just protect your information, it protects your image. The less you speak, the less there is for people to pick apart. The less you react publicly, the fewer opportunities there are for others to judge you based on a momentary lapse in judgment. One careless joke, one angry rant, one drunken confession can stain how people see you for years. And all it takes to avoid that, choosing not to speak in the wrong moment. Here's something most people don't realize. Your words are often remembered differently than you intended. You might say something as a harmless throwaway comment, but someone else could take it personally. They could repeat it to others, framed in a way that makes you look arrogant, ignorant, or cruel, and you'll be left trying to defend yourself against something you never meant in the first place. But if you didn't say it, if you held it back, there's nothing for them to twist. That's why you have to treat every conversation like it has potential consequences. Not in a paranoid, trust no one way, but in a disciplined, my words are valuable way. If you value your privacy, you have to protect it actively. That means you don't answer every question right away. You don't share details with people who haven't earned the right to know them. You don't feel pressured to fill awkward silences with random personal stories, just to keep the conversation going. People will often try to get information out of you without making it obvious. They might ask casual, friendly questions. So what's going on with you lately? But if you answer every single one honestly and in detail, you're handing over a roadmap to your life. In the wrong hands, that roadmap can be used to undercut you, outmaneuver you, or embarrass you. Sometimes the safest answer is vague, non-committal, and quick. A simple "things are good" can shut down an entire line of questioning without creating hostility. Silence also gives you time to assess the intent behind the questions people ask. Not everyone is trying to help you. Some are fishing for weaknesses, testing your boundaries, or simply collecting gossip to share later. When you rush to answer, you don't give yourself the chance to spot the trap. But if you pause, if you take a breath before responding, you can decide whether giving that information benefits you or not. And make no mistake, protecting your information is protecting your reputation. People respect mystery. They respect the person who isn't always broadcasting their business. When you're selective about what you share, it signals that you're careful, measured, and strategic. It makes people curious about you. And curiosity works in your favor. It draws people in without you having to oversell yourself. Contrast that with the person who talks constantly about themselves, their problems, their victories, their opinions. At first, it might seem like confidence, but the more they speak, the more chances they give others to find flaws, contradictions, or vulnerabilities. They make themselves an open book, which might feel good in the moment, but over time, it can erode the respect others have for them. There's also a subtle psychological shift that happens when you speak less. You become the person who listens more. And when you listen more, people tend to trust you more. They start to tell you things they wouldn't tell others. They confide in you. And in those moments, you gain insight, leverage, and understanding, all without revealing anything about yourself. That's the irony of it. By being silent, you often end up knowing more about others than they know about you. Of course, this isn't about never speaking. It's about understanding that your words are assets. Just like money, you can spend them wisely or waste them carelessly. The more intentional you are about when and how you speak, the stronger your position becomes, whether that's in a business meeting, a family conflict, or even a casual conversation with someone you barely know. In the end, your information is part of your identity. It's your life, your experiences, your thoughts. Once you give them away, you lose control over how they're used. Silence is the safeguard. It's the invisible shield that keeps you from giving away too much too soon. And in a world where everyone is shouting, posting, and broadcasting their every thought, the person who can hold back instantly stands out. They become someone others can't quite figure out. And that's exactly what makes them unforgettable. Because the less they know, the more they guess. And the more they guess, the more you control the story. Emotions are powerful. They can push you to act before you've thought things through, make you say things you wish you could take back, and cloud your ability to see what's really happening. When someone knows how to trigger your emotions, whether it's anger, frustration, or even excitement, they can steer you like a remote-controlled car. That's why one of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to pause, to keep silent, to create a gap between the stimulus and your response. That gap is where you regain control, and silence is what gives you that space. When you respond immediately in an emotional state, you're not making decisions, you're reacting. And reactions can be exploited. People who want to manipulate you will often provoke you on purpose, looking for that knee-jerk response. They want you flustered, because when you're flustered, you stop thinking strategically. You focus on the heat of the moment instead of the bigger picture. Silence robs them of that victory. Consider a heated argument. You're accused of something you didn't do, or someone makes an unfair comment about you in front of others. The instinct is to defend yourself instantly. You want to correct the lie, set the record straight, push back. But in that rush to respond, you might reveal more than you should. You might show that they've gotten under your skin. You might raise your voice or say something sharp, which can then be used against you as proof that you're overreacting. Suddenly, you've shifted the attention away from the real issue and put yourself on the defensive, all because you didn't give yourself that moment of silence. Silence in an emotional moment isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about not giving your opponent the satisfaction of knowing their tactic worked. It's about protecting your decision-making process from being hijacked by adrenaline or anger. When you keep quiet, you keep the power to decide how and if you'll respond at all. Sometimes you'll decide the best move is to walk away. Other times you'll choose to respond with precision. When your emotions are under control and your words are sharpened for maximum impact. And silence also disrupts the cycle of escalation. Arguments often work like a staircase. You say something, they respond, you go one step higher, they follow, and before you know it, you're both shouting from the top. But if you choose not to take that next step, if you just stop climbing, the other person has nowhere to go. The fight loses momentum, the energy fizzles, and you walk away with your composure intact. In professional settings, emotional traps can be more subtle. Maybe someone in a meeting undermines you in front of your boss. Maybe a client says something insulting about your work. In those moments, everyone is watching to see how you'll react. If you lash out or get visibly rattled, you confirm exactly what your critic was hoping for, that you're not in control of yourself. But if you stay silent, even just for a few beats, you send a completely different message. I decide when and how I respond, not you. That's a show of authority, and it often makes the other person second-guess their approach. Silence also keeps you from committing to things you'll regret later. Excitement is just as dangerous as anger when it comes to making impulsive choices. People will hype you up, push you toward a decision, or dangle an opportunity that sounds amazing in the moment. But if you're too quick to speak, too quick to agree, you might find yourself locked into something that doesn't actually serve you. By holding back, by giving yourself the silent space to think, you're able to separate the emotional rush from the logical evaluation. Think about those moments when someone tries to bait you into proving yourself. They might make a dismissive comment, hoping you'll jump in to demonstrate your worth. They might challenge you publicly, hoping to get you to blurt out your strategy or reveal your next move. If you take the bait, you've given them exactly what they wanted. But if you stay silent, you leave them hanging in uncertainty. That uncertainty works in your favor. It forces them to guess, to fill in the blanks, to waste energy wondering what you're thinking. There's also a deeper layer to this. When you stay silent, you're practicing emotional regulation. You're training yourself not to be led by your feelings, but to lead them instead. The more you do this, the stronger that skill becomes. Over time, you start noticing emotional traps before they're even set. You see the subtle ways people try to provoke you, and instead of falling for it, you step around it entirely. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring the situation. It means you're gathering information. In those moments when someone is pushing your button, staying quiet allows you to observe them. How are they trying to get a reaction? What's their real goal? What do they reveal about themselves in the process? Often you'll learn more by not responding than you would by engaging. And the best part, they won't know what you're thinking, which keeps you unpredictable. Being unpredictable is a form of protection. If people can't predict how you'll respond, they can't easily manipulate you. But if you're the kind of person who always reacts quickly, always jumps into the fray, always defends yourself the same way, you become an easy target. Silence breaks that pattern. It keeps you from being predictable, and that alone makes you harder to control. In personal relationships, silence can be just as powerful. It gives you the space to calm down before you say something hurtful. It keeps the focus on solving the problem instead of tearing each other apart. It sends the message that you're not here to fight just for the sake of fighting. Over time, it can change the dynamic of your relationships, replacing the cycle of emotional reactivity with one of mutual respect. The truth is, emotional traps are everywhere. They can come from strangers on the internet, coworkers in the office, friends who mean well but push too hard, or family members who know exactly which buttons to press. The common thread is this: if they can get you to react instantly, they control the next move. Silence takes that control back. It gives you time, it keeps you composed, and it makes sure that when you do speak, it's on your terms, not theirs. Mastering this doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice to bite your tongue when you're burning to respond. It takes discipline to hold your ground when someone is clearly trying to provoke you. But once you learn to do it, you'll notice something amazing. You stop feeling like other people can pull you around emotionally. You stop being a puppet to their provocations. You become your own anchor, steady no matter how rough the waters get. And in that stillness, in that refusal to be rushed or rattled, you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing controls you without your permission. And that is real power. When you walk into a room, people notice more than your clothes, your posture, or your handshake. They notice the way you carry yourself in conversation or the way you don't. Most people talk as soon as they have the chance, filling the air with their opinions, their stories, their justifications. But the ones who hold back, the ones who don't rush to speak, carry a different kind of presence. There's an energy about them, a question that lingers in people's minds. What's going on in there? That question is power. And it's born from silence. Silence creates mystery because it leaves space for imagination. When you're not constantly broadcasting every thought and feeling, people are left to fill in the blanks themselves. And here's the interesting part. They almost always imagine more than what's actually there. They start assigning depth to you, assuming you're thinking strategically, calculating, or holding information they don't have. Whether that's true or not, it works in your favor. They're playing on your field without realizing it. In contrast, the more you talk, the less mystery you have. You might be fascinating, but if you reveal every detail, people don't have to wonder about you. They already know. And when people know exactly what you're thinking and why, they lose that urge to lean in and pay closer attention. Your presence becomes familiar, predictable, and easy to read. Silence interrupts that predictability. It forces others to watch you, to study you, to wait for your moves. There's a reason leaders in high-pressure situations often speak last. They don't jump into the conversation right away. They let others talk, argue, and reveal their positions before they say a single word. When they finally do speak, everyone listens. The scarcity of their words makes them valuable. It's like a rare gem. Its worth isn't just in what it is, but in how uncommon it is. This is how authority is built. Authority isn't about volume or how often you talk. It's about impact. If you speak constantly, your voice becomes background noise. But if you speak selectively, your words hit harder. People will remember them because they were rare and deliberate. And silence is what makes that possible. Think about an experienced teacher or mentor you might have had. They didn't answer every question the moment it was asked. Sometimes they'd let the question hang in the air, studying the room, thinking before they spoke. That pause, the silence before the answer, did more than just give them time to think. It made everyone lean forward. It made the answer feel more intentional, more valuable. That's the psychology at work. When you're silent, you're telling the world, I am not rushed. My thoughts are worth waiting for. Mystery also shifts the balance of attention. In a group setting, the talkers are often trying to be noticed, while the quiet ones are being noticed without trying. There's something magnetic about someone who isn't constantly seeking validation. They seem self-contained, grounded, and confident enough not to need the spotlight. That kind of composure draws people in. It makes them wonder, what do they know that I don't? Of course, silence on its own isn't enough. If you're quiet but fidgety, avoiding eye contact, or shrinking into yourself, the mystery you create isn't one of authority, it's one of discomfort. True authority in silence comes from combining stillness with presence. You hold your posture. You maintain steady eye contact when it's appropriate. You look like someone who has a reason for not speaking yet, That's when silence transforms from awkward to commanding. In negotiation, mystery becomes leverage. If the other side can't read you, they can't predict your next move. They don't know whether you're pleased with their offer, offended by it, or indifferent. That uncertainty makes them uneasy. And people who are uneasy tend to reveal more than they should, or make concessions just to break the tension. Your silence becomes the space where they start talking themselves into a weaker position. The same applies in personal relationships. If you're constantly voicing every frustration, every thought, every reaction, you leave no room for intrigue. But if you can keep certain things to yourself, not in a way that shuts people out, but in a way that shows restraint, you keep the relationship balanced. You avoid becoming predictable, and you keep the other person curious about what's going on beneath the surface. Curiosity is a form of investment. It makes people stay engaged. This doesn't mean playing in games or withholding important truths. It means understanding that you don't have to explain yourself at every turn. You don't have to fill every silence with words just to make others comfortable. In fact, when you stop doing that, you send a quiet signal. I'm comfortable in my own space, and I don't need constant approval. That confidence is felt more than it's seen, and it carries weight. Mystery also protects your authority from erosion. The more people know about your insecurities, doubts, or weaknesses, the easier it is for them to question your leadership. When you speak less and reveal less, you make it harder for others to pick apart your credibility. They might guess, they might speculate, but they can't point to anything concrete. That absence of certainty keeps your position strong. There's a discipline to this. Most people feel the urge to fill silence because they're afraid of what others might think. If they don't, they worry that silence will be seen as ignorance, as having nothing to contribute. But that's only true if you carry yourself that way. If you're silent but attentive, making it clear you're listening, processing, and choosing your moment, you flip the narrative. Instead of they don't know what to say, it becomes they're waiting for the right moment to speak. The most dangerous person in the room is rarely the one shouting. It's the one who listens, who watches, who only speaks when they have something worth saying. That person's words carry more weight, not because they're louder, but because they're earned. Silence is what earns them. It's what transforms ordinary speech into something people remember. So the next time you feel the urge to fill the air, pause, let others talk, let them reveal themselves, let the tension work in your favor. And when you finally choose to speak, do it with intention. Because when your words are rare, people stop to hear them. When your presence is wrapped in a layer of mystery, people take you seriously before you've even said a word. And when you've mastered the balance of silence and speech, you no longer have to demand authority. Your silence makes people give it to you. In a fast-paced world where everyone feels the need to respond instantly, silence can feel unnatural, almost uncomfortable. We're conditioned to fill gaps in conversation, to prove we're engaged by replying right away, to show we have an answer on the spot. But here's the thing, quick answers are rarely your best answers. The truth is, most mistakes in communication come from speaking before you've had a chance to think. Silence is the tool that changes that. It gives you breathing room. It gives you the ability to evaluate the situation, consider your options, and choose your words with intention rather than impulse. When someone says something to you, whether it's a question, a challenge, or even an insult, your brain is processing more than just the words. You're interpreting tone, reading body language, comparing it to past experiences, and trying to predict the consequences of your reply. All of this takes time. If you rush to speak before your mind has caught up, you're likely to blurt out something incomplete, inaccurate, or emotionally charged. And once it's out, you can't take it back. That's why silence is so valuable. It's a pause button in a conversation that allows you to align your emotions with your logic before you move forward. Consider what happens in negotiations. The most skilled negotiators don't jump in with a counteroffer. The second they hear a number, they pause. They let the words sink in. They give themselves time to analyze whether this number benefits them, what it reveals about the other side's position, and how they might use that information. That pause also makes the other side wonder if they've miscalculated, sometimes leading them to adjust their own offer without you saying a single word. the silence isn't empty, it's doing work for you. The same principle applies in personal situations. Imagine a friend comes to you with a request you're not sure you want to agree to. If you respond immediately, you might say, yes, just to avoid the discomfort of hesitation, only to regret it later. But if you give yourself a moment, whether that's a few seconds in the conversation or telling them you'll think about it, you give yourself the opportunity to weigh the pros and cons. That moment of silence protects you from commitments made out of pressure instead of choice. Silence also gives you a chance to fact-check yourself in real time. In the heat of a discussion, you might feel certain about something you're about to say, only to realize with just a few extra seconds of thought that you're not entirely sure. Speaking without that check can make you appear careless or unreliable. Taking the pause, even if it feels awkward, can save you from having to backtrack or apologize later. There's a psychological benefit too. Pausing before you respond sends a signal that you take the conversation seriously. You're not just reacting, you're considering. People tend to respect that. They see you as deliberate, thoughtful, and composed. Even if they're impatient for your answer, the fact that you're not rushing communicates that your words are intentional, not just reflexive. One of the biggest traps in communication is letting someone else's urgency dictate your pace. People will pressure you to respond quickly, whether it's through rapid-fire questions, a confrontational tone, or even silence of their own. They want you to fill the gap so they can regain control of the conversation. But you don't have to play by their timeline. You can slow things down. That's where silence becomes not just a thinking tool, but a form of control. You set the tempo instead of matching theirs. This is especially important when emotions are running high. If you've ever been in a heated argument, you know how easy it is to blurt out something just to win the moment. But those quick, emotionally driven statements are often the ones that cause the most damage to relationships and reputations. Silence acts as a buffer between the feeling and the action. It lets the initial emotional wave pass so you can respond with clarity instead of rage. Some people worry that pausing before responding will make them seem unsure or unprepared, but in reality, it often has the opposite effect. Think of the leaders you've respected most. They rarely jump into an answer without taking a beat. That beat shows they value accuracy over speed. It shows they're not afraid of a little quiet, and because they choose their words carefully when they do speak, those words carry weight. There's also a tactical advantage to using silence as a thinking tool. In a conversation, when you take a moment before responding, you might notice details you would have missed if you spoke too soon. A hesitation in the other person's tone, a flicker of uncertainty in their expression, a subtle shift in body language. Those cues can give you deeper insight into their true intentions or emotions, allowing you to respond in a way that's far more effective than a rushed reaction. Sometimes the smartest response you can give is no response at all. At least not in that moment. If someone tries to bait you into saying something you'll regret, silence gives you time to decide whether the conversation is even worth engaging in. Walking away or postponing the discussion might not be the most dramatic choice, but it can be the most strategic one. The key is to get comfortable with that space between hearing and speaking. Most people fill it out of habit, fearing that silence will feel awkward or make them appear disconnected. But the opposite is true. When you own the silence, when you use it intentionally, you turn it into a display of composure and authority. You're showing that you don't speak just to fill space. You V when you're ready, and not a moment sooner. Over time, this habit rewires the way you handle conversations. You stop feeling rushed. You stop letting other people's emotions or timing control you. You become more precise, more strategic, and more confident in every interaction. And the people around you notice. They may not consciously think. They use silence well, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the difference between someone who reacts and someone who responds. That's the beauty of silence. It buys you more than time. It buys you clarity. It buys you presence. It buys you the ability to shape the conversation instead of being shaped by it. In a world that rewards speed, there's real power in being the person who's willing to slow down, think, and choose their words with care. Because when you finally do speak, your voice isn't just another sound in the noise. It's the voice that changes the direction of the entire conversation. At the end of the day, silence is more than the absence of noise. It's the presence of control. It's the ability to hold your ground when others try to push you, to protect your information when the world wants to take it, to keep your emotions from becoming someone else's weapon, to build an aura that commands attention, and to buy yourself the time to think before you act. The world will try to convince you that power belongs to the loudest voice in the room. Don't fall for it. Real power belongs to the one who doesn't speak unless there's a purpose. The one who can sit in the tension without breaking. The one whose silence forces others to question themselves, reveal their weaknesses, and give away more than they ever intended. Anyone can talk. It takes no skill to fill the air, but it takes discipline to hold back. It takes strength to resist the urge to prove yourself with words. And it takes wisdom to know that sometimes the most commanding thing you can say is nothing at all. So the next time you're faced with pressure, provocation, or temptation, remember this: your words are currency. Spend them like they matter. Because when you master silence, you don't just win conversations, you win control. And control is where all influence begins.